This channel is all about longer classes and challenging poses, and today we have a class that incorporates blocks the entire time. This class will use blocks as props in a variety of ways to help you build strength and experience your practice in a different way. If you're interested in trying my free handstand guide, then click the link below in the description box. Welcome to Yoga Dose. My name is Cece, and today we're going to begin in a Supta Baddha Konasana position. And this class uses blocks, so I highly recommend having 2 blocks. I like the cork blocks because they can really support your body weight. But if you're setting up here with your blocks, take 1 block and place it on the medium height and place it underneath your thoracic spine, and then take the other block, placing it on the highest height, and place it underneath the back of your head. We're going to stay here for a couple minutes, really opening up through the chest, stretching out the upper back. The bottoms of the feet can be together here. And begin to connect to your Ujjayi pranayama. Inhales as long as the exhales. Breathing in and out through the nose with a slight constriction in the back of the neck. Now for this class, I just want to say before we get started, I feel like there's a misconception about blocks that if you use blocks in your practice, then you're not an advanced practitioner, or that means that you're not very good if you need blocks. But I just want to clear the air and say that's completely untrue. Blocks are great props, and you'll see in this class some of my favorite ways you can use them. Also, everyone's body proportions are different, so sometimes adding a block to a standing posture can give you the correct proportions so that your spine is correctly aligned. So we'll just play around today using blocks the entire time. Make sure you're still connecting to your Ujjayi breathing. This position is great for when you have headaches, or maybe if you work a desk job and you're hunched over a lot during the day. This can kind of counteract those feelings. One of my favorite stretches for sure. You want to try to keep your steady breathing through the entire practice, and if at any point you find that you lose your breath, then you know you should back out of the posture a bit. Breathing is the most important thing in yoga, so just keep that in mind as we practice today. Taking care of our bodies, honoring our bodies in our practice. Now gently bring your knees together and slowly make your way off your blocks, moving them off of the mat. And then lie back down on your back and hug your knees into your chest for Apanasana. Maybe rock a little bit side to side, massaging the lower back on the ground. Keep the right knee hugged in, but extend the left leg out straight. Taking a half Apanasana pose. Then you have an option here to straighten the right leg, grab one of your blocks, and then just reach the block towards your toes, lifting the chest off the ground, the chest and the head, actively reaching the block towards your right foot, moving at your own pace, lifting up, lying back down, lifting up using the abdominal muscles, being careful with your neck. Bring the left leg up to match the right, and then switch sides, raising the block up to meet the left toes, moving at your own pace. Take about 10 repetitions here. Breathing in and out through the nose. Now, bend your knees, place the block in between your feet, and we'll do an exercise called pass the block. So holding the block in your feet, pass it to your hands, lower down, pass it to your feet, lower the arms and legs down, bring it back up, switch the block to your hands, lower down, lift yourself up, pass the block to your feet, lift back up, taking about 10 of these, moving at your own pace. You can do more or less, doing what your body needs. Trying to keep a posterior tilt in the pelvis so your lower back is flat on the ground, core engaged. Keeping your head on the ground until you lift up to pass the block. And then you can lift it. This one's a real ab burner. I really felt this the next day. Couple more repetitions. Keep passing the block. Now release, drop the block, and now hug both knees back into the chest for Appanasana pose again. Maybe rocking a little bit side to side. This time keep the left knee hugged in, extend the right leg out, half Appanasana. Holding the left leg in towards your chest and then maybe extending it straight any amount. Grab your block again and reach up for those toe lifts. Keeping the lower back on the ground, lift the block towards the foot about 10 times. Breathing steady. Then sit up onto your sit bones into a Navasana boat pose. And then you're going to take, I think they're called Russian twists with the block. So tap the block to the side, come back to center, and switch sides. Take about 20 repetitions here. Keeping a long spine, chest lifted. Just tapping the block to the side, working our oblique muscles. Keeping the legs lifted. If you want more of a challenge, you can straighten the legs any amount, otherwise keep them bent, or to modify, you can keep the toes on the ground. Release the block now, coming onto your hands and knees. Place both blocks underneath your hands about shoulder distance apart, and make your way into your first downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. The elevation from the blocks helps you lengthen the spine. So draw your navel in, rotate the triceps back, the biceps forward, and pedal out your heels, releasing any tension in your hamstrings. Alternate bending one knee and the other. Draw the navel in and up. Take the gaze in between the thighs or up towards the navel. Notice how this downward facing dog feels different on the blocks versus on the floor. Notice the extra space you get when your hands are elevated. Now gaze forward, gently lower onto your knees. And then move one block, keeping one block on the mat, and then place your elbows on top of the block, pressing the palms together behind your shoulder blades, taking a nice stretch through the shoulders and the triceps. It's like puppy pose, but your elbows are on the block. One of my favorite stretches for sure. Being gentle with yourself here. Couple more breaths in this position. You can always place both blocks side by side on the highest height if you want a deeper stretch, resting the elbows on top. I chose to just do a medium height today. It's up to you. Now from here, make your way to the top of your mat and lengthen the spine in Ardha Uttanasana. And then exhale, fold forward over the legs. Before you inhale, rise up, arms overhead. And then exhale, Samastitihi. Now grab one block, place it on the skinniest width, and place it in between your thighs. Now here you want to focus on squeezing the block in between the thighs. Maybe rolling your shoulders forward or back, coming into a steady mountain pose, rooting down through the feet, lifting through the kneecaps, engaging the quads, and reaching out through the crown of the head. We're going to move through some Surya Namaskar A sun salutations with the block in between our legs. Now this is just really going to help you work the engagement of the inner thighs. So on your next inhale, raise the hands up and overhead. And then exhale, fold forward over the legs, keeping the block squeezed. Inhale, lengthen the spine. Exhale, plant the hands and jump back into a chaturanga position, still squeezing that block. Inhale, lift the chin and chest into upward facing dog, belly drawing in. And exhale, take the hips up and back for downward facing dog. All the while you're still squeezing that block. We're going to take a few more just like this. You might feel your legs start to fatigue after a couple. That's good. That means you're working the muscles. Now take the gaze forward, bend the knees, hop or step up to your hands. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, fold. Inhale, rise all the way up, arms overhead. And exhale, Samasthiti. I said jump or step by habit, but you really do have to jump up to the top of your mat in order to keep the block in place. So doing that again, inhale, arms overhead. Exhale, fold forward over the legs. Inhale, lengthen the spine. Exhale, plant the hands, jump back, chaturanga, bent elbows. Shoulders no lower than elbows. Inhale, upward facing dog. And exhale, downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. As you squeeze the inner thighs towards each other, focus on pressing the back of the legs towards the wall behind you. Breathing steady here. Now bend the knees, gaze forward, hop or step up to the top of your mat. Inhale, lengthen. And exhale, fold over the legs. Inhale, rise all the way up with your arms overhead. And exhale, Samasthiti. You might have to adjust the block if you notice it's slipping at all. You want to keep it in that same spot in between your thighs. Inhale, reach the arms up and overhead, gazing in between your thumbs. Exhale, fold forward as you draw the navel in strongly. Inhale, lengthen the spine, reaching through the crown of the head. And exhale, plant the hands, jump back, chaturanga, bent elbows. Inhale, Urdhva Mukha, and exhale, Adho Mukha Svanasana. Regain your steady breathing. Lifting from the forearms to take pressure off the wrists. You're actively reaching the heels towards the ground, although they never have to touch. Mine didn't touch the ground for years. It took a long time to get that hamstring flexibility. Bend the knees, gaze forward, hop or step to the top of your mat. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, fold. Inhale, rise all the way up, arms overhead. Exhale, Samasthiti. Again, inhale, arms overhead. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, lengthen, belly drawing in. Exhale, chaturanga. Inhale, upward facing dog. Exhale, downward facing dog. Still squeezing that block in between your thighs. Notice the difference this makes in your sun salutations. Maybe you notice that in your standing or your uttanasana, your feet aren't touching all the way, and that's okay. Gaze forward, bend the knees, hop or step up, lengthen the spine, inhale. Exhale, fold forward over the legs. Inhale, rise up, arms overhead. Exhale, samastitihi. Last one, inhale, arms overhead. Exhale, folding forward. Inhale, lengthen the spine. Exhale, jump back, chaturanga dandasana. Inhale, upward facing dog, lifting the chest, lifting the chin, and exhale, hips up and back, downward facing dog. Adho Mukha Svanasana. Building heat in the body here, but keeping the breath steady. Bend the knees, gaze forward, hop up to the top of your mat. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, fold. Inhale, rise up, arms overhead. And exhale, samastitihi. Now remove the block from your inner thighs, setting it to the side of your mat. And inhale your arms up and overhead, taking a side stretch, grabbing your right wrist with your left hand, leaning over to the left, and then maybe switching sides, grabbing the right wrist with the left hand, leaning to the right. Exhale, fold forward over the legs. Inhale, lengthen, and then exhale, plant the hands, jump back into chaturanga. Inhale, upward facing dog, and exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, step the right foot in between the hands, line up front heel with back arch, opening up into Warrior 2, Virabhadrasana B. Make sure your right knee is right over the ankle, your thigh is parallel to the mat, and you have weight in the outer edge of the back left foot. Gazing over your front middle finger, trying to keep your arms on a level plane, triceps engaged. We're going to be holding these standing poses a little bit longer than maybe usual because we're going to be using the assistance of our blocks as props. So just be patient, keep your breath steady, about 4 seconds on the inhale, 4 seconds on the exhale. Focus on your breathing rather than how long we're staying in the posture. Couple more breaths. Now grab one block, place it on the outside of the right foot, choosing your height depending on your body proportions, moving into Utthita Parshva extended side angle pose. So you might find that resting your right hand on a block might be a little bit easier. You might find that you have more length in the spine. In this posture, you want to feel extension all the way from the outer edge of the back left foot, all the way up through the extended fingers of the left hand. A strong, long, diagonal line through the side of your body. Keep that front right leg bent and press the knee into the right arm. Feel that active connection between the knee and the arm. If your neck feels good, your gaze should be following your left hand. Now inhale up to a T, maybe shorten the stance if you want, moving into Utthita Trikonasana triangle pose, this time resting the right hand on a block. You can keep it at the same height that you had for side angle pose, or you can experiment with a higher or a lower setting with the block. Again, notice if this block gives you more extension in the spine, more space in the posture. You want more weight in the ball of the right foot in Trikonasana. Maybe taking your gaze towards the left hand. Bandhas engaged, Uddiyana Bandha, deep inner abdominal muscles, and Mula Bandha, the muscles of the pelvic floor. From here, take your gaze down to the mat, bring your left hand to your left hip, scoot the block forward with the right hand, and then lift up into Ardha Chandrasana, half moon pose, with the right hand on a block. Again, notice what the block does for you. Maybe place it on the highest height. See if it's easier to balance. Maybe on the lowest or the medium. Actively stamp out through the left heel, envisioning yourself as a starfish, actively reaching out through all 4 limbs. You can test your balance by gazing up towards your left extended hand. Breathing steady here as you root down through your right foot, keeping your leg muscles active and engaged. Now, scoot the block about a foot over to the left, planting the left hand on the block, still keeping the left leg lifted, moving into revolved half moon pose, or Pavrita Ardha Chandrasana. This time your right hand's extended up, you want level hips, belly drawing in, and still stamping out strongly through that left heel. Gently lower the left foot down, line up front heel with back heel, straighten both legs, moving into Pavrita Trikonasana, twisted triangle pose. Draw the right hip back, the left hip forward, squaring off the hips, and maybe take your gaze up towards the extended right hand. Feel the opposition through your body as you reach out through the crown of your head and back through the tailbone. A long line with your spine. Keeping the leg muscles very active here. Now we're going to move into Pavrita Parshvokonasana, twisted side angle pose. So your left hand is on the outside of the right foot, right arm extended. Your left hand can be on a block. If you feel any discomfort, you can always just turn to the ball of the back left foot and maybe just take your hands into heart center. That's an option instead of the full posture. Now inhale, rise up into Warrior One, lined up front heel with back heel, deep bend in the front knee, arms reaching strongly up overhead, gazing towards your thumbs. Again, see if you need to draw the right hip back, left hip forward. And also draw your front lower ribs towards your frontal hip bones, squeezing the core. By doing this, you'll feel more of a stretch in the left hip flexor. Now lower your hands down to the mat. Move through Chaturanga. Inhale, upward facing dog. And exhale into downward facing dog. Taking these standing poses to the left side. Regain your steady breathing in your downward facing dog. Couple more breaths here. Now inhale, Step the left foot in between the hands, line up front heel with back arch, opening up into Warrior 2 Virabhadrasana B on the left side. Again, deep bend in the front left knee, trying to get the knee parallel to the mat, keeping your torso directly over your hips. You might find that sometimes your torso is leaning forward or back, but you want a pretty straight up torso. Keeping weight in the outer edge of the right foot, weight in the heel of the front left foot, so much so that you could lift the toes up at any point. Grab your block, moving into Uddita Parshva extended side angle pose, resting your left hand on a block on the outer edge of the left foot, keeping that deep bend in the left knee and pressing it against the left arm. Right arm extended up alongside your ear with the pinky facing down. External rotation to protect your shoulders. Breathing steady here. Focus on your breaths, not the duration of the posture. Inhale up to a T position, option to shorten the stance, moving into Uddita Trikonasana triangle pose, planting the left hand on the block, on the outside of the left foot, straightening both legs here. Keeping both legs very active, working towards getting your spine parallel to the mat. Turn your gaze down towards the mat, move the block about a foot ahead of the pinky, lifting up into Ardha Chandrasana half moon pose, stamping out through the extended right leg, pressing through the heel, right arm lifted, gazing up towards the extended hand. Rooting down through the left foot so strongly, keeping your balance. It helps to find one place to focus your gaze for your balance. Lower the right hand down, moving the block to the right side of the mat. Keep the right leg lifted, and this time lift the left arm, coming into twisted half moon pose, Pavrita Ardha Chandrasana. Working towards level hips here. Use Uddiyana Bandha to protect the low spine. Gently lower the right leg down, line up front heel with back heel, straighten both legs, twisted triangle pose, Pavrita Trikonasana. Maybe lifting the right hip up a little if you find that it's sinking down. Keeping both legs straight and very active. Bend the front knee, lengthen the stance, coming into twisted side angle pose. Right hand on the outside of the left foot on a block. Left hand extended forward, pinky facing down. Or to modify, turn to the ball of the back right foot and take your hands to heart center. Right elbow resting on top of the left knee, keeping a deep bend in that left knee. If your hands are at heart center, use the leverage of your right elbow on the knee to bring your hands closer towards the center of your sternum. Couple more breaths here. Inhale, rise up, warrior one. Keeping that deep bend in the front knee, drawing the right hip forward, left hip back. You want to draw the left femur bone into the hip socket, actively envisioning that motion. Now release your hands down to the mat. Move through chaturanga. Inhale, Urdhva Mukha, upward facing dog. And exhale, Adho Mukha, downward facing dog. Regain your steady breathing. Deep inhales and exhales. Take your gaze forward, bend the knees. This time, jumping through to a seated position. Grab both of your blocks. Now here, I chose to put my blocks on their tallest height. If you feel unsteady, then maybe take it to a lower height. Place your hands with your fingers facing forward on the blocks, and then lift yourself up into an L-sit, being careful, balancing on the blocks. And then lower the hips, taking tricep dips here. Take 10 tricep dips. This is why I chose the blocks on the highest height, because it makes harder tricep dips. But you can still have a great benefit if the blocks are on lower heights, especially if you feel unsteady. Lift yourself back into an L-sit position, core engaged, bum and heels off the ground. And then bring the hips back forward, bending the elbows, taking tricep dips. Dropping the hips down towards the ground, 10 more repetitions at your own pace. Take the hips back, lifting back into an L-sit, core engaged. Lower the heels, bring the hips forward, 10 more tricep dips. Feel your triceps start burning. Mine definitely were, especially by the end of these 10. Lower down onto the ground. Bring your blocks forward in front of your hips. Draw the knees in towards the chest. Taking Navasana boat pose. Keeping a lift through the sternum, lift through the chin. Maybe keeping knees bent if it allows you to have more length in the spine. Again, a modification is to keep the toes on the ground. Plant the hands on the blocks, lift yourself into low lasana, knees towards your chest, and then lower back onto the ground, coming back into boat pose. So to move into low lasana, you plant the hands, lift the hips, and then swing the feet back, keeping the thighs and knees hugged towards the chest. So keep that in mind. For our next one, coming now, plant the hands, move into low lasana, belly drawing in strongly, and then lower back down for Navasana. Holding here. Trying not to take yourself too seriously, it is just boat pose. But we are building so much strength, especially if you want to work on your lift-offs. Now plant the hands. Lift up into low lasana. And by lift-offs, I meant for your jump backs. These come back into boat pose. These exercises help so much with jump backs if that's something that you're working on. Now plant the hands, lift the hips, come back into low lasana, pendant pose. Lower back down onto your sit bones, Navasana pose. Plant the hands, lift the hips, and this time take a jump back, shooting the legs into chaturanga, inhaling upward facing dog, and exhaling downward facing dog, all the while keeping your hands on the blocks. Gaze forward, bend the knees, come through to a standing position, and exhale, fold forward over the legs. Inhale, rise up, arms overhead. Now grab a block. We've done this before in a couple of videos, but you're going to grab the block, lift the knee, and balance the block on top of the thigh, resting your elbow on top of the block. Holding here, stamping through the right heel as though your foot is on the ground. Now this exercise just really helps build strength in the hip flexors. Open up the hip towards the right side, maybe taking your gaze over the left shoulder. Trying to keep the leg at a level height. Bring the leg back to center and then extend the shin and foot out, holding here, keeping the block balanced on the thigh. And then exhale, release. Good work. Moving to the left side. Balance the block on top of the left thigh, elbow on top of the block. Breathing steady, stamping out through the heel of the left foot as though your foot was on the ground. Open up the leg towards the left side, gazing over the right shoulder, rooting down through the right foot, staying balanced. Inhale, left leg back to center, extend the leg straight out, staying here, holding here, balancing. Feeling the hip flexor burn. Now lower the left leg down to meet the right. Good work. Building so much strength in those hip flexors. Inhale, rise your arms up and overhead, and exhale, fold forward over the legs. Inhale, lengthen the spine. Exhale, plant the hands, hop or step back, chaturanga. Inhale, upward facing dog. And exhale, downward facing dog. Gaze forward, bend the knees, come all the way through to a seated position. And open up your legs wide, coming into an Upavishta Konasana position, grabbing your blocks. Time for some infamous wide leg liftoffs, placing the blocks around the right thigh. Plant the hands, lift the hips and the heels off the ground. Stay lifting or move into Ekapada Kvendanyasana and then come back through to our wide leg liftoff where you're still holding up and then gently lower down. Catch your breath by taking a side stretch along the right leg. Right arm on the inside of the right shin, left arm up and overhead, maybe grabbing the toes. Regain your steady breathing. These liftoffs are hard, but they build so much strength. Moving on to the left side now. Lift everything off, holding the legs up, maybe moving through Ekapada Kvendanyasana. Taking that fun transition, or still holding, you can do it, and then lower the hips down. Regain your breathing, again, taking the side stretch on the left side. This time, left arm inside along the shin, right arm up and overhead, maybe even grabbing the left toes. Inhale, come back to center, bring your legs back together. Grab both of your blocks, bring them in front of your hips. Plant the hands, hug the knees in, lift the hips, swing the legs back to chaturanga. Inhale, Urdhva Mukha, and exhale, Adho Mukha. Practicing a few jump through and jump backs on the blocks, giving you more space, making it more accessible. So for the jump through, gaze forward, bend the knees so deeply, belly towards the thighs, hop up, and then swing the legs forward, lowering the hips down. Moving now into Janu Shirsasana A, bringing the right foot to the inside of the left thigh, wrapping the hands around the left foot, inhale, lengthen, and exhale, fold forward, drawing the belly in, trying to line your belly button up over your left thigh. Inhale, lengthen, lift the gaze. And then exhale, grab your blocks, place them in front of the hips, hug the knees in, lift the hips, swing the legs back, chaturanga. Inhale Urdhva Mukha on the blocks. Exhale Adho Mukha Svanasana. Gaze forward, bend the knees so deeply, gaze far forward, hop up, come through into seated. Moving into Janu Shirsasana A on the other side. This time left foot pressing against the inside of the right thigh. Inhale, lengthen, exhale, fold, belly drawing in. Working towards getting your navel over the right thigh. It never matters how deep you get into a stretch, only that you're feeling a good stretch for your body. Inhale, lift the gaze. Exhale, cross the ankles, plant your hands on the blocks. Lift the hips, swing the legs back, chaturanga. Inhale, Urdhva Mukha. Exhale, Adho Mukha, downward facing dog. Again, gaze forward, bend the knees, belly towards thigh. Hop up, swing the legs through, coming back into seated. This time moving into Baddha Konasana, bringing bottoms of the feet together. Wrapping the hands around the feet. Inhale, lengthen, and exhale, fold forward with as much length in the spine as possible, belly drawing in strongly, using the elbows to press the thighs open even wider. Reaching your forehead or your chin down to the mat. Inhale, rise up, and then exhale, scoot the feet forward, wrap your arms underneath the shins, and fold forward with a round spine this time. A more gentle Baddha Konasana, still keeping the navel drawing in to protect your low spine. Inhale, release, grab your blocks, place them in front of your hips, hug the knees in tightly, plant the hands, lift the hips, swing back, chaturanga. Inhale, upward facing, exhale, downward facing dog. See why those lalasanas are so helpful for your jump backs, because you're doing the same motion at the beginning. Gaze forward, bend the knees, belly to thighs. This time, hopping the legs around the arms for Bhuja Pidasana. Cross the ankles, and then bring the ankles behind the arms, lowering your chin or your forehead down to the ground. Squeezing the inner thighs so strongly around the arms, just like you were squeezing the block. And then inhale, lift back up, extend the legs for Titibhasana. Swing the knees back, Bakasana, and then shoot into Chaturanga. Move through your vinyasa. Super fun transition. You can press pause, try it a couple times, maybe watch first. The blocks in Bhuja Pidasana give you a lot more space to work with, so it can be easier to practice Bhuja with blocks. Gaze forward and come through to seated again. This time, lying down onto your back, moving into bridge pose. So here we're going to take one block back into the inner thighs like we did at the beginning of class. Lift the hips, pressing into the heels, engaging the hamstrings. Keeping the chin away from the chest, really focus on squeezing the block in between your thighs. This motion is so incredibly important for backbends, so actually having the block there can help you really work on it and feel how much engagement you need in the thighs and in the legs. Holding here in this bridge pose, then gently lower your hips down, removing the block. This time, placing the blocks underneath the feet, hip distance apart. Lift back up into a bridge pose, maybe interlacing the fingers behind your back. Notice how much more lift you can get when your feet are on blocks. Still keeping the glutes and hamstrings engaged, stamping down through the heels. Gently lower the hips down. Option here to take another bridge pose or lift into Urdhva Dhanurasana with your feet on blocks. taking Urdhva with your feet on blocks can really help alleviate any lower back pain if you have it in wheel pose. So just play around, notice how it feels. Gently lower down. Lift back up into another Urdhva Dhanurasana. Still focus on squeezing the inner thighs together. Envision that you have that block in between your thighs again. If you have a third block, place it there as well. Gently lower down. Move the blocks off the mat and hug your knees into your chest, gently rocking side to side. Releasing any tension in your lower back. Massaging the low spine on the mat. Begin to rock yourself up and down along the spine. Coming up to a seated position, we're going to take Paschimottanasana, or a seated forward fold. Today I chose to sit on one of my blocks. And keeping my knees bent, I took a very gentle forward fold. You can do the same, or if you're feeling warm, just take a regular deep Paschimottanasana. Whatever feels good for your body today. Inhale, look up. And exhale, move the block. This time, setting up so that the block is in between your feet, set up for Shirsasana, bound headstand, and then keeping the block in between your feet, you're going to try to lift up using all of your core strength, keeping the block pressed against your feet, using the block as added resistance to really build core strength here. If you're new to headstand or headstand's not really in your practice, I recommend not using the block. But if you are, gently lower the block, tap the mat, and then raise the legs back up. We'll do this a couple more times. Lowering straight legs, using your core, tap the block to the ground, and then inhale, lift the legs back up, finding your straight line. Again, draw the navel in, lower the block, tap the ground. Inhale, lift the legs all the way back up, finding your straight line, your Tadasana line. Again, lower down, but this time stopping halfway for Ardha Shirsasana, belly drawing in strongly, keeping your legs at a 90-degree angle parallel to the mat. Inhale, lift back up, finding your straight line. And then exhale, slowly lower your feet down, dropping the block down, maybe moving it aside as you take Balasana, child's pose, resting your forehead against the mat, gently pressing the forehead into the mat with your arms back around your feet. Regain your steady breathing. That's one of the very best ways that I know of to strengthen your core. So if you have a strong headstand practice, using a block or some extra weight, even without a block or weight, doing those toe taps are really good for strengthening the core. Now you have an option to take a vinyasa here or go straight to downward facing dog. And then gaze forward from your downward facing dog, bend your knees, come through to seated, and then lie down onto your back. From here, hug your knees back into your chest, rocking side to side in Apanasana pose. Maybe making figure eights along your spine. And then grab both of your blocks, bring the bottoms of your feet together for Supta Baddha Konasana, but this time, for some added resistance, place the blocks on top of your knees and just rest here for Shavasana. The blocks are just adding a little bit extra weight, some extra resistance so you feel a deeper stretch. But if you feel any pain, then take it without blocks or just move into a more traditional shavasana. Resting here, releasing your ujjayi pranayama and just feeling your body sink into the mat. Bring your breath back to your body, removing the blocks from your knees if you have them, and then using your hands, press your legs back together, planting the feet, being gentle because you just took a deep stretch. Hug your knees into your chest, rock side to side, gently waking your body up from this shavasana. Taking your time here, notice how your body is feeling. Slowly begin to make your way into a seated position. Inhale, raise your arms up and overhead. Exhale, bring your hands into heart center. Thank you so much for taking the time to practice with me today. Namaste.
It's so easy to get caught up in trying to be perfect all the time, especially these days with social media where most everyone only shows their best side. This TED Talk by Iskra Lawrence talks about the importance of letting go of perfection and instead focusing on self-care both mentally, emotionally, and physically.